When an important Roman died, their face did not always disappear with them. Elite families preserved an image of the dead person's face. Then they carried that face back into the family home. It was placed inside the atrium. The face might remain there for years. Visitors could see that the family possessed a long ancestry. But the face was not kept only for private remembrance. When another important relative died, the old faces came out again. Living performers dressed as the dead ancestors. Then the ancestors joined the funeral procession. Generations of dead Romans appeared to walk together. To the crowd, the family's past had returned. This was not simply a strange funeral custom. It was a public demonstration of memory. It was also a demonstration of status. So why did Romans preserve their ancestors' faces? Why did living people wear or carry them? And how did the dead become political power? Romans called these ancestral images imagines. The plural expression imagines maiorum means images of the ancestors. They belonged especially to prominent families. Ancient writers describe extraordinarily lifelike faces. Polybius says the image reproduced features and complexion with remarkable fidelity. Pliny later describes wax models of ancestral faces. The material made the ancestor seem physically present. Wax could capture tiny wrinkles and expressions. It could also be colored to resemble living skin. But almost none of the original wax objects survive. Wax melts, decays, burns, and is easily damaged. That forces historians to rely heavily on texts. It also creates an important uncertainty. Were these always wearable masks? Were some complete wax heads? Or could the word Imago include several kinds of portrait? The traditional mask interpretation remains the most familiar. But the video must keep that uncertainty visible. The ancestor image became part of the family after death. The exact manufacturing process is not fully documented. Some scholars think molding could begin while the person was alive. Others allow that some likenesses may have been associated with death. Ancient descriptions focus more on the result than the workshop. The finished face preserved recognizable identity. It was not an anonymous funeral mask. Its value came from belonging to one named ancestor. The image carried the memory of offices held. It carried victories and public honors. It also carried family expectations. The likeness was placed in a visible part of the home. The atrium was where clients and visitors were received. So the ancestor display was never entirely private. The house itself announced the family's history. Every preserved face said that the family had served Rome before. The living members stood beneath that reputation. And they were expected to add another face one day. The images were commonly associated with the atrium. They could be stored inside wooden cabinets or shrines. The cupboards protected fragile wax from dust and handling. But labels and family connections could remain visible. The display worked like a physical family archive. A visitor did not need to read a history book. The faces themselves presented the family's past. Some ancestors had been consuls. Some had commanded armies. Some had celebrated public victories. The display compressed centuries into one room. The dead watched over meetings with clients. They watched political alliances being discussed. They watched young heirs grow up. This made ancestry part of everyday elite life. But most days the faces remained still and enclosed. A death in the family changed that. The cupboards were opened for the funeral. Roman funerals transformed stored images into performers. Polybius says people resembling the ancestors were chosen. Height and general appearance helped create the illusion. Each performer represented a specific dead relative. The ancestor's clothing showed the rank he had held. A consul appeared in the appropriate toga. A censor or triumphator could appear differently. Official insignia made the identity readable to the crowd. The performer did not simply wear a frightening face. He became a temporary double of the ancestor. Voice, posture, and movement could complete the impression. Several generations might be represented together. The living family prepared beside its dead lineage. Past and present occupied the same room. Then the doors opened onto the street. The bier moved first. The living mourners followed. And the ancestors stepped out with them. The funeral procession turned the city into a stage. Musicians and mourners announced its arrival. The body of the newly dead traveled toward the forum. Behind it came the family's earlier generations. One represented a grandfather. Another represented a celebrated consul. Another might represent a victorious commander. The dead appeared not as memories, but as bodies in motion. They turned corners. They passed temples and public buildings. They looked toward the crowd. Children could see generations they had never met. Clients saw the history of their patron's family. Political rivals saw it too. The longer the line, the deeper the family appeared. A funeral became a moving family tree. The dead did not literally return. But Roman ritual made their presence publicly convincing. The procession eventually reached the forum. The deceased was displayed near the rostra. The ancestor performers took prominent seats. The crowd could see the whole family across time. Then a living relative delivered the funeral speech. He praised the person who had just died. But he also recounted the achievements of earlier ancestors. As each name was spoken, a visible figure represented it. Words and bodies reinforced each other. The family's history became easy to remember. The speech celebrated courage. It celebrated public service. It celebrated victories and honors. Polybius believed the spectacle inspired young Romans. A boy could imagine earning the same recognition. The funeral therefore looked backward and forward. It preserved memory of the dead, and recruited the living into the same competition for glory. Roman aristocrats competed through ancestry. A long lineage could strengthen a living politician's authority. It suggested that public service ran in the family. It suggested experience, loyalty, and inherited prestige. The funeral made that claim before a huge audience. No campaign poster could equal generations walking together. The newly dead joined the existing chain. His achievements increased the family's capital. His failures could also affect its reputation. The living heir inherited both opportunity and pressure. He benefited from famous names. But he also had to prove himself worthy. The masks turned memory into expectation. They made the dead participants in present politics. This is why the custom was mainly elite. It required famous ancestors worth displaying. It required resources to preserve and stage them. And it required public recognition of the family's claims. The tradition is often described as an aristocratic privilege. Older scholarship sometimes called it a legal right of image. But the idea of a simple formal law is debated. Roman practice changed across periods. Status could depend on office, family, custom, and political circumstance. The best evidence concerns prominent men and public careers. Yet elite women also lived among and transmitted these family images. Marriage could connect two ancestral lines. Copies or memories could move between households. The practice was therefore not isolated from women's lives. But the represented public officeholders were usually male. Most ordinary Romans did not stage such enormous ancestral processions. They had other ways to remember their dead. So this was not a universal Roman funeral. It was a specialized performance of elite identity. Even within the elite, details could vary. The custom was powerful precisely because it was selective. It made social hierarchy visible through the dead. The most famous reconstruction shows actors wearing wax masks. Polybius uses a word that can mean face or mask. His account strongly suggests impersonation. But scholars still debate the physical form of the Imago. Some argue for hollow wearable masks. Others argue that some were complete portable heads. Ancient Latin authors do not always use the expected word for theatrical mask. Visual art does not settle every question. No securely identified elite wax Imago survives intact. That makes absolute certainty impossible. The safest narration uses careful language. Elite families preserved lifelike ancestor images. These images were brought into funeral ritual. Performers represented the ancestors in appropriate dress. The likeness may have been worn, carried, or otherwise displayed. The theatrical effect remains clear in every reconstruction. The dead were made visibly present. The uncertainty changes the object, not the purpose. If these objects were so important, where are they now? Wax is one of the least durable artistic materials. Roman summers could deform it. House fires could destroy entire family collections. Handling during repeated ceremonies caused damage. Pigments faded. Families died out or lost political importance. Objects could be reused, neglected, or discarded. Late antique changes altered domestic and funeral customs. Christianization also changed how elite memory was expressed. Eventually the physical tradition disappeared. Text preserved what wax could not. Sculpture provides indirect clues. Archaeology provides fragments and comparisons. Modern artists have reconstructed possible wax masks. But reconstruction is not the same as survival. The missing objects make the tradition feel mysterious. Yet the written descriptions remain unusually vivid. So what did Romans do with their dead ancestors' faces? Prominent families preserved highly recognizable ancestral images. They displayed them inside the family home. The images kept ancestry physically present. At major funerals, the stored likenesses re-entered public life. Performers represented the dead ancestors. They joined the funeral procession through Rome. They gathered in the forum. A speaker recited the family's achievements. The crowd saw generations assembled together. The ritual preserved memory. It taught younger Romans what glory looked like. It honored the newly dead. But it also strengthened the living family. The preserved face became proof of ancestry. Ancestry became a claim to authority. The funeral became political theater. And for one day, Rome's dead appeared to walk again.